in the beginning, it's a lot of you're at your desk and it is a grind and you are having some difficult conversations with people you never met before. But throughout the years, I would say 2 years in is really when I started to hit my stride. So now I've been here for 4 years. I'm a senior account executive. So a lot of it is pre-COVID, I should say, I was on the road 4 or 5 days right? It's so crazy. 4 or 5 days out of the week, and I was going to my different accounts, whether those were in Boston, in Waltham, some were South Shore, one was in Rhode Island, but I was meeting people for the first time. I was maintaining relationships, whether that's taking my clients out to lunches, taking them to dinners or happy hours or sporting events. So even if they didn't have an opportunity from the time that I met them, establishing that relationship, even for years sometimes, is kind of what our goal is. And I cherish my relationships with my clients, which is why I enjoy being out of the office way more than being in. But if I'm not on the road, I'm talking to candidates for recruiters. I'm having calls to qualify more jobs. It's a lot of phone, which I love. So every day is different now, which is kind of the beauty of once you put in that hard work in the first couple of years. So like I said, you can have office days, you can be on the road. So I love the flexibility of being able to make my own schedule, be out when I want to be. So yeah, it's definitely changed as far as what it looks like, but I am on the client side getting job orders and running that process of interviews to offers, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And we'll dive into that a little bit later as well, just to give more context. But definitely, that's great hearing a lot more about the client-facing side. And then, how are the candidates actually matched up with the jobs? Mitch, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the recruiting side?
Yeah, certainly. So on the recruiting side, we get our job orders from our account managers. Those are, in a lot of ways, the people that we sell to. I mentioned that even as a recruiter, you do a lot of selling. So we get these job orders and we, connect with our account managers on a daily basis to really understand what our end clients are asking for. What's going to make this person successful, from a skill set perspective, as well as a personality and culture fit perspective. And from there, we're going out and using tools like LinkedIn and Monster, some of the ones I'm sure you all are more familiar with. Using the networks that we have created and the people that we've already talked to go out and try to find folks that are going to be a match for those positions. Day to day in the office, a lot of the morning is morning meetings and getting those jobs and connecting with those account managers. And a lot of the remainder of the day is smiling and dialing, so to speak. You're on the phones, you're connecting with potential candidates, you're using email and LinkedIn messaging and some other avenues as well.
So basically what we have talked about so far, ultimately where we break things down is either going to be the focus on the recruiting side or the focus in on the sales side. Now, typically for someone to come in on the recruiting side of the business, their day-to-day would be what we call as a staffing consultant. So this is actually where we do entry-level hire for that recruiting type of role. And depending on office location, depending on where it is you're looking to be after graduation, we do have different teams and divisions actually represented in those given offices. So represented, obviously, here today, we talked a lot about the tech group, but in addition to that, we have more of like an associates division working with administrative professionals. We have a financial group working with finance and accounting. So we're pretty widespread in that sense. But if you were to be on that staffing consultant side of things, the day-to-day is exactly what Mitch has described, working with more so of the candidates. Getting to know them, understanding their backgrounds. Day-to-day is about sifting through resumes, being on the phone, talking to candidates, ultimately going through that full interview process, preparing them for interviews, getting them feedback, etc., to the point that you've gotten them actually placed into a new position. And then on the flip side is exactly what Hallie's talked about, more so of the sales focus. I would say that this is definitely going to be more outside sales. As you've mentioned, really the flip side of working with the clients is that you are connecting day to day with different types of businesses. I'm sure Hallie can speak to, but Fortune 500 companies down through startups and anywhere in between that we may actually look to partner with. So they're responsible definitely for more of that establishing of a rapport with the hiring managers, really selling the services of Beacon Hill to those companies, maintaining business, new business, existing business, negotiating contracts, going through that entire workflow of candidates. So like I mentioned before, no matter what side of the business you do actually want to pursue at the entry level, whether that be for a staffing consultant or an account executive, all of our positions are still considered relationship-oriented sales roles. Expectations for training. Mitch, if you wouldn't mind telling us, as I know that's a lot of the questions I get kind of front of mind from an entry-level perspective, how do I learn this business? how am I going to be successful? So from a manager perspective, what is it about training that you think really allows Beacon Hill to stand apart? How would you kind of describe that process?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a little different now as well with COVID and folks starting remote. One of the things that we've done as an organization is instituted, especially for new graduates, is a program, an additional training program that they go through that pairs them with mentors. So some senior level folks from within the organization to have and to reference to, but also gives them a training class of peers who are, starting at a similar time period, and go through a lot of the basics of how to have certain phone conversations, how to qualify a candidate, how to read a resume, right? A lot of the basics of what we do. In addition to that, on the tech side, we have specific training that breaks down a lot of the technologies, and that will come with time.
In terms of our growth potential here, Hallie, why don't you tell a little bit more just about your path, where you started, where you are now, and how that growth has really transpired for you?
Sure. Yeah. So when I first started, I was obviously an account executive, and then 2 years in, I was promoted to senior account executive. So in terms of growth and just being able to get to the goals that you want to get to, there's certain numbers that you need to achieve consecutively to be able to be promoted. So even if you're working really hard and you feel like you should be promoted, the numbers are very clearly outlined for you, and for me, that way, it's nice to know how close I am to getting there and what I still need to do. So when you first start, these numbers are very clearly lined out, and it's basically what you're bringing in weekly, at least for us here in Boston, needs to be consecutive for a month. I've come close where things were consecutive for 3 weeks, and then it wasn't the fourth, and you have to start over. But so now I am a senior account executive, and what comes with that is just your book of business in general is busier because you have more experience, you have more clients, you've been in the job longer. And so kind of what I was touching on earlier, my days are more meetings, repeat customers, referrals, writing those jobs. So it's just busier. I have more volume in general. In terms of where I can go, the great thing about Beacon Hill is even if you're not sure what you want to do, if you want to stay an individual contributor like myself, or you're curious about management, or you might want to be a team lead, my boss has been always very supportive of doing my research and getting exposure. And a huge thing for me, which Mitch mentioned, is our mentee program. So many of you guys, hopefully on this call, would be assigned to someone like myself, and it's really going through that motion of transitioning into sales, whether or not you started in a sales role at Beacon Hill or started as a recruiter and you're moving into sales.
I'd love to hear from both of you. What is actually your favorite part of the job? What really gets you going, keeps you coming in every day and saying, this is why I do what I do?
Other than the building relationships that I told you guys about, I would say, and Mitch also touched on this, the relationships that you make internally are so valuable to the point where it's basically the same level of the relationships you're making with your clients. So many of the people that I've worked with for 4 years now are truly my friends. And so I would say just being able to come into an office of people of all ages and all backgrounds, but you still have that rapport of not just coworkers, but friends is huge. So just seeing people that I just genuinely enjoy is one of my favorite things. I don't think you can put a price on that. I have a lot of friends and family members who go to work and they see all of us going out together after a long day or spending a weekend together, and they just say, I wish that I had coworkers that we were able to have that sort of mini community, I guess. So I didn't think a place like this existed where it really feels like a family. It really, truly is. So I would say that's my favorite thing, aside from building relationships outside, for sure.
It goes along with the relationships you build, but it's really that impact that you're able to make. I have a few different stories that I can tell. One of the shorter and easier ones to tell is I was able to place a woman, first job out of school with a Fortune 100 networking company and a lab admin job. This was her dream job, to the point where as I gave her the offer, she was crying on the phone to me.
Love for you guys even just to touch upon that. I know obviously we love working with the people, but what are some of the fun things, the biggest stories about Beacon Hill or favorite traditions that you love about our culture?
obviously our Christmas holiday party is like unlike anything I've ever seen. So we've grown so much to the point where we are now in the convention places in Boston that will fit us. And we have, I think it's now, it might be 53 offices across the country. So they fly everybody in, everyone gets to bring their significant other, they get put in a hotel, and then we just have a really good time, and it's full of prizes and awards and drinks and delicious food, and it feels like you're at some sort of grand ball. And if you are one of those people that gets awarded, you really feel like you're at a red carpet event. I can't describe that feeling, and it's also nice just because you get to meet all these people across the country that you probably would have never gotten to do otherwise. But we also do a day after party, which it might be an unpopular opinion, but I actually like that better. So we rent out 2 restaurants down the street from our headquartered office in Boston, and the party starts at 10 a.m. and we just really celebrate all of our hard work all day long, and again, eat good food and drink good drinks, and we just get to kind of blow off some steam from the year, and that is, for me, just one of the most fun days. So it's hard between those two, and they kind of go hand in hand. But for me, those stick out for sure.
The things that I enjoy the most about this place is really about culture. And it comes down to like Friday afternoons, we do this thing, Beers in the Bullpen, where we're able to just Friday afternoon, 4 o'clock. At that point, it's difficult to get folks on the phone. Folks are looking out to the weekend. So we all kind of have a beer, sit around in the bullpen, and at that point, you're really trying to close deals, right? All your work from the week, all these interviews that you've had, and you're trying to shut things down. It's a really good way to end the week on a positive note, right? It's a high in the office. The office is buzzing. People are closing deals, and we're ringing bells and gongs, and we're writing deals up on the board. It's an exciting and energetic time.
I want to round things out because I do want to leave a few minutes actually at the end for any additional questions. But just as kind of a last caveat to this conversation, if you could describe your Beacon Hill experience in one word, and I know that's hard because we've had a lot of words exchanged today, but in terms of what you would say, Hallie, what would you say would be your one word to describe your experience?
And if there's one word for how I feel about Beacon Hill and my experience at Beacon Hill, it's grateful. Those are my 2.
The word that I finally settled on was home. I feel like this is a home away from home for me. Like I said, we spend 40, 50 hours a week. I spend more time with the people that I work with and on the phone with them than I do, my own family a lot of the time. And so I feel like I found a home, and it feels like, again, the culture, just all of it is the right place, and it's where I'm supposed to be.
It's really important to even look at our industry and to say, okay, that, companies come to Beacon Hill, whether they are Fortune 500 startups, and they want to utilize our services because we're able to connect them across so many different types of industries to the ideal candidates that they might be looking for. Ultimately, we do represent different sides of our market that could range anywhere from more temporary contract placement to temporary into permanent placement to even full-time direct hire placement. So there's a lot of different needs that companies may actually want to come to us for, and where we can get a little bit creative on actually having to navigate that search. One of the questions is, what is your greatest lesson that you've actually learned during your very first year at Beacon Hill?
For me, the biggest thing was understanding that things don't happen overnight. I'm someone, like, if there's a task at hand, I need it to happen in that moment, and then I'll feel better about it. But when you first start out in sales and, staffing, especially because it's so competitive in Boston, it is really hard work, and it's a grind. And I think, no one is going to get you there other than yourself. You have assistance, but you have to bring hard work day in and day out. There's no coasting. And I think the amazing thing about Beacon Hill is most of the people you're surrounded by have been here for 5, 10, 15 years. And so when you're coming in as a junior salesperson and you see, all these people out on the road getting these jobs and filling them in, 24 hours, you want that for yourself, and it's attainable, but you need to get yourself there. So it's, that you have to let yourself enjoy that process as much as possible and just trust your leaders. So I think for me, at my previous staffing agency, I didn't have that guidance. And so being able to come here and realize it's possible. It's hard work, but it's possible. So just knowing that it's on you if you want to produce. So that for me, a lot of people I think see sales as fun and you just have to have a bubbly personality, and it's that's great if you do, but there's a lot more to it and it takes time to process that.
Definitely. And I think that's a hard lesson to, come to terms with, but I think it's so valuable is actually trusting, the people around you and really allowing yourself to sometimes fail. And that's kind of scary, but to know you have so much support around you, I think that's huge. I'm seeing a few questions come in just as about more of like our process. So I'll take these as I do actually oversee pretty much all of our entry level hiring. So first off, specifically, when it comes to our different divisions to address this, you are not necessarily directly placed into a division. It's definitely something that I would keep pretty open in terms of what's most of interest. As both of the panelists today do work within our technologies group, that was the best interest for them. They said, great, I feel like I resonate more with working with those types of professionals. It's not necessarily like a draw system that, you ultimately get just filtered into one of those. It would be an open dialogue that we could definitely have as an additional follow-up conversation, depending on office location, as well as depending on where it is that you feel like you would connect more with those given professionals. Across Beacon Hill nationwide, we are a little bit different from some other staffing firms, as it's not just going to be tech, it's not just going to be finance. We do have a variety of other opportunities that we could keep relatively open as for what's most of interest. So we can definitely discuss that at a further date as well. I'm seeing another question, and I think it's really important to address in terms of just more eligibility as well. There is no exact major, minor internship that's going to automatically make you successful in this given industry, or even in just the application process. I myself was a communication major, Hallie was communication, Mitch was business. But like I was mentioning before, I've actually interviewed candidates who come from, psychology backgrounds, biology. I've even hired someone from a chemistry background who wanted to be in a sales environment. I think ultimately looking at this as take the actual title of your major, of your minor, of your internship off the table and look kind of between the lines here. What is it that you actually really like to do? And if it is working hard, working with goals, working with metrics, seeing results for the work that you do, and also down to the core, working and thriving on building relationships with people, that's going to be the name of the game here. And ultimately, everything else falls into place when we train you, we teach you, and using your background from that given major or from your academic career to maybe filter into those different divisions. If you're a finance major and you say, I have an interest in connecting with finance professionals, but I don't want to crunch numbers, great. That's a pretty happy medium as for ultimately where you can maybe pursue with us. So very similar across the board for any of our given teams. To go even just follow up on that previous question, that could definitely be something we could figure out where your background would actually align with one of these roles. Awesome. And then lastly, I'm seeing, what advice do I give to college seniors? Mitch, you do a lot of interviewing for me. So why don't you actually take this question, your best advice through the interview process for someone who is at a college senior level and might be interested in our teams?
That is a good one. Yeah, sure. I've definitely done some of the events. I think, the best advice that I have is it's advice that I use with candidates and with my team all the time is really just be transparent. Be yourself, be honest, be open with what you're looking for. If this is the right fit for everyone, then you're going to be able to come here and be really successful. And if it's not, then that's okay too, right? So that would be probably the best advice I have. On a more personal level, I would say enjoy it, right? You have another year of fun in college life before the quote-unquote real world. But in terms of applying to jobs in general, I would say be transparent with your employers, but be transparent with yourself about what you really want and what you're expecting and what you're looking for and looking to get out of a job. Again, this is a lot of work. There are plenty of jobs that are out there that are less work, that are easier to do. There's no doubt this is a grind, but it gives you a lot back. And it gives you definitely a quality of life as well that some other jobs may not. So I think, transparency is something I use that word probably 50 times a day with candidates of all age groups and all levels. But I think it's a very important mindset to have when looking at jobs.
Definitely. And I'll say that I have these conversations Day in, day out. This is my demographic. This is my bread and butter. So my best advice to a college senior, if I could look back to myself in 2016 of my fall of senior year, I would say, take a breath, enjoy it. It will all come together. I know, and I look to my group of friends currently, and they all had jobs in the fall. They were finance, they were accounting, they had a direct path. And I was the lone communication major who was sitting there like, I don't know what I want to do. And that's okay. I'm going to say that that's okay. A lot of employers out there are going to say, you have to have a plan. You have to have this. You have to have this. I would say, from our perspective and how we even approach our interview process, that might be different from other firms, is that I want you to be able to explore your entirety of your job search. I don't want you to just sign the dotted line, because ultimately it might not be the best fit. And what you think you want now, just to say that you actually got a job before you graduated, or I got a job before my other friend here, it's less of that competition. It's a lot more about finding that best fit for yourself. So if my best advice is for anyone who's still figuring things out this fall, have conversations, attend events just like you are doing right now. This is the best thing that you can be doing. Learning about different industries, taking that call, even if you're like, I don't know if I want that job. It's okay. You can ultimately say no. This is definitely a very happy marriage, I would say, that has to actually occur. This needs to be a mutually beneficial relationship for you and your future employer. They want you to succeed just as much as you want to be there. And it's definitely still something that we always have to kind of come back to terms and saying, do I really want to work hard? Do I want to be in this job that is performance-based, that is goal-oriented? Because that's what we do here. And in full transparency, that's not going to be the job for anyone, for everyone, as to echo what Mitch said, it's definitely something you got to figure out. Is this going to be for me? We hope it obviously is. We would love to have you join us June 2021. And that kind of leads into ultimately just the application process. If this is something from today that you say, absolutely, I'm ready to have the next conversation with Beacon Hill, I'm excited about this. We do have a live job posting on Handshake, which I know I personally have messaged either on LinkedIn or out on Handshake to a lot of you actually in the audience today. If it is something that you're excited about, definitely feel free to apply directly there, but also follow up with me. I am more than happy to have a follow-up conversation, whether that happens, this week, next week, in the short term, or even if it is saying, hey, Hannah, I gotta chill. I gotta try some things out, try and figure this is what I want, and revisit this, later on in the semester too. So definitely know that our application process is open. Our hiring managers across the country, across different divisions, are actually going through the interview process now. We are extending offers as early as November, December for May graduates, for people who are definitely serious and ready to jump into this and ready to sign that dotted line because they feel like they've explored enough. But that is definitely where I would say from here to kind of round out our conversation, our application process. We are excited definitely to connect with you and to figure out if this is going to be a good long-term fit. I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to give everyone a few minutes back in their evening today. If there are follow-up questions, please refer directly to the survey as a result of this. When you do close out, you will have a few just questions to answer in regards to your experience in watching the panel today. But I want to say thank you so much to Mitch, to Hallie. You guys are awesome. I can't wait to actually be with you guys again and to see you again. But I appreciate your time tonight. I know the attendees do as well. So I hope everyone has a good night and thank you again.